So your boy got a little too excited and forgot to have the guest introduce himself. Mickey Kennedy was amazing. We talked a lot about PR, life, and different strategies. I asked him about a couple of situations in my life, but nothing crazy or outrageous. Just honest to God, had a good conversation. I left it with a lot of good knowledge on PR and how to approach things. So also, he's just a really fun guy to listen to. So enjoy.
I run e-releases. It's a press release distribution business I started in October of 1998, so a little over 25 years. Um, I finished my MFA about 27 years ago, and my original game plan was to wait tables and write poetry. And I did that for a summer and realized that I don't know, your back and knees hurt from being on concrete for 10 hours a day. And so I just decided I need a safe office job. And I got hired by a telecom research startup in Washington, D.C. And I was employee number three because I had writing as a background and an English degree. They were like, hey, write press releases for us and send them out. I did that a few times. Got no real pickup initially, but then I started to figure out what journalists were looking for. I was just publishing some of pockets of our data, and I realized they wanted stories behind the data, and so I'd flesh those out and then talk about those. And those did start getting lots of media pickup, and I was faxing at the time. And I think over the next year or so, a lot of journalists started to call and say, "Hey, in the future, could you just email these to us?" And so I just thought, hey, I could put together an email database just contacting journalists. I spent a little over a year reaching out to journalists and just asking them if I could put them in my database. I was originally going to be technology oriented, but what I found is as I talked to journalists, they'd be like, oh, my beat changed. I no longer do technology or consumer electronics. Now I'm sports or I'm business. And so it's just like, okay, I'll just keep record of everybody. And and then when I launched in October of 98, I had about 10,000 journalists, and I was just a matchmaker, getting clients and sending their press releases to these journalists. And we were having pretty good success.
That's interesting. So you just the evolution going from, the working as the waiter to the office job. It's like a cliche, but it's almost like the stereotypical, like you start off as a waiter but realize there's greater things. What what about the press release system did you like the most?
I liked how if you told a compelling story, you could get lots of media attention. So the startup that I worked at, I mentioned we published telecom data, and I was like, oh, here's our most recent telecom data for inbound and outbound traffic to the U.S. For Caribbean countries, and nothing happened. And I did notice that like one country had way more traffic than everybody else, so I was like, okay, let's explore why. And I found out it was the center of 1-900 numbers. And so when I wrote a press release about that and I wrote about the story and sent it out, we got picked up in The Economist, Financial Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and three telecom trade publications after, nothing before that. And so I just felt like, wow, this is really, really great. It drove a lot of sales, drove a lot of interest. We started talking about, data being a predictor for economic growth. Like if you looked at a country that was not industrialized and all of a sudden it started having growth, if you looked back, you could kind of see it through telecom growth 3 years before. And so we published a release about that, and that got the attention of hedge funds and investment firms. And all of a sudden we were getting tons of orders from a whole new audience that we never had. And I just thought, why aren't other people trying this? And I just felt like I wanted to be out there and sort of help people get their messages out and get access to the media.
That's really cool. I didn't know about the correlation between the phone number and the sign of growth. That's really cool. The one thing you touched on, and you've hit it twice, and I want to double down on it, is the story behind the press release. There must be a formula to that story, though. You can't just be like, "My name is blank. I grew up in Kansas." Blah blah blah.
Right. So press releases are generally written in the third person. They're an announcement, and it's sort of like top down. What's the most important thing? You want to make sure that the entire message answers the who, what, when, where, how, and why. But at the end of the day, what you're announcing, you want to make sure it's meaningful and it can fulfill a story arc because journalists, even if it's a small article, like to have a story arc. And everybody knows what a story arc is. We've been telling stories since we sit around campfires, thousands of years ago. It has a climax or it has something, and then it sort of settles down. And you know, take things that get announced through press releases. We get a lot of product launch press releases, and it's usually like, here's a new product that we're introducing. Here's a list of features. Here's a page to learn more, and boom, they send it out. And of course, not much usually happens because there's not much there for a journalist to write a story about. But if you were to talk about your journey, what caused you to create the product, that could be something. You could put a use case study in there. Very few people release something that they haven't had people try out. And so, what was the experience of someone? This was a company that was losing 12% a year, and not profitable, but they used your logistics solution. It made them more efficient, and all of a sudden, at the end of the trial, they achieved a 9% profit rate, which is just phenomenal. And then you have a quote by them, and so a journalist looking to cover this would say, "Oh, I have an audience." Is this important enough that they would either entertain or educate them? And ideally both. And they're like, oh, well, this is an interesting product. We've got a great little story that illustrates its value. Yeah, that would attract a journalist. And so many people think about it as we've got this product, we want to sell more. So let's just list the product, list features, but they don't think about the needs of the journalist and the need for there to be enough elements for them to create a story.
Yeah, no, that's very true. As I think about it, I don't personally read a lot of press release, but the few I have, it's usually the compelling story where it was like the underdog CEO. Like I couldn't find a product, so I made it myself, and it was just like, oh wow, okay, cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, personal stories and journeys are really important. I mean, there's a reason that everybody that appears on Shark Tank usually opens with their personal story where they're vulnerable or, they're sharing an obstacle or, what inspired them to create the product or the company. And, the reason for that is it really just sort of immediately creates a human interest element. There's this immediate empathy that you feel for the other person, and it really helps to humanize them. And that story and that journey and that arc is an important element to a lot of people's success in getting people interested in them and interested in covering them.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, one thing that I've been thinking about, and I'm sure you get this a lot with your press releases, is the new AI startups. How do you help them find people in correspondence for like a press release for let's say, if you talk into this app, it'll transcribe what you say and then give you an AI summary. How would something like that work with your mechanics and stuff?
So, I mean, if you're looking for us to write a release, what we try to do focus on is, uh, what what is unique about your product or service? What's your story of creating the company, and what's your unique selling proposition? What do you do that's different than everybody else in the marketplace? What you talked about using AI to transcribe it. I think I know of like 14, 16 companies out there that do it. And I've used one with Zoom for I think almost 2, 3 years, and it's done a great job. So I would think if you're entering that marketplace with AI, based on what you described, they're not doing anything new, and I don't think a journalist would be attracted to it. But if there was an element that they were doing something different, or they had their own different spin on it, is that spin important enough to interest an audience that journalists represent?
That's a really good answer, actually. Thank you. Yeah, there's a friend of mine, he's working on something like that, and I keep telling him, I'm like, you're unique, but I can't explain why you're unique, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really important. And it's really if you're a startup and you sort of realize that you're very similar to a lot of things, that's your moment to sit there and say, what could we do to enhance this product or tweak it or a slight pivot to make it much more unique. And really, the best thing to do is talk to people who use products like that and say, have you tried this product? And some people will say, yeah, but it doesn't do this. Or I would love a product that would just do X, Y, and Z. And if you get a few people saying the same thing, you can potentially say that could be a direction that we could consider. And I do think that, I deal with people all the time who, when I ask them what's unique about their business or what do they do, they often say, I'm just a commodity business. I'm just located in the Chicago area, but I'll ship anywhere. But there's literally 60 companies across the US that do the same exact thing, selling the same exact widget. And I'm like, whoa, you are in a bad business because the only way, if you are selling a commodity and you're selling it the same way with no distinction from everybody else, the only thing you're competing on is maybe proximity, the belief that being closer will get it to him better. But he said, I can order it from any warehouse anywhere. So the delivery is the same for anybody. You're only competing on price. And that's a terrible thing because eventually it will drive prices down to the point that you're just making razor thin margins. Yeah, I've also had conversations with people who said that. And then they're like, well, we really do great onboarding. And I said, tell me more. And they're like, oh, well, we have a library of like 600 hours worth of videos that you can go in and do a search for doing any action with this very complex CRM. And it's there and and they can immediately implement it. And I'm like, okay, how hard would it be your competitor to create that? He goes, well, there are some competitors that have videos that they add every once in a while, but they've got like 12 hours and we've got hundreds of hours. And I'm like, okay, it seems like it would be very hard for someone to create hundreds of hours to compete against you. That is your unique selling proposition. And they said, oh, we don't tell people about it until after they bought. And I said, that's stupid because if I'm looking at two companies that are basically a commodity and price is a consideration, I'm going to just go with the cheapest and then find out, luckily, maybe you have this on the back end. I said, you could charge 10, 15% more than everybody else, and they would choose you because you have this great onboarding library and resource that anytime someone's stuck using the CRM, they can go to a video that they can easily search and be able to implement it. I said, do you know how many people buy CRMs and then are just devastated that they spend tens of thousands of dollars on consultants because they can't figure out how to do these little intricate actions and things like that? I said, this is your unique selling proposition. And so, yeah, you have to be able to create something that is unique and really defines you differently. And there's lots of different ways to do it. I mean, there's some companies that, Amazon started competing on how quick they can get it to you. And then, other little things as well. But everybody has sort of something that they do a little bit different than everybody else. And you just have to figure out what that is for you.
So what would be some of the steps to figure that out? Let's say it's hypothetical, like a coaching business that like a lot of people, especially during COVID, want to be a coach. So what could someone offer that's unique that no one else could offer? Is it like a one-on-one consulting, a deep analysis of your business kind of thing?
I think for a coach, it is who you are and kind of what your track record is. And so, I don't think people are going to go and say, based on the number of people I've consulted, X amount have grown. But I think that having case studies, I don't think testimonials is enough, but having case studies where you include quotes from the person, but you also show numbers like I provided coaching to this person. This was their obstacle, and this was the outcome. And ideally, people like numbers and data, if they can get that in there, and then having an amazing quote by them, and that really shows value. You want to go beyond a testimonial because I'll be honest, a lot of people have testimonial fatigue, and it doesn't, it's so easy to just sort of get friends and family to build testimonials, I think is what people think. And it's harder to get that actual data and get those numbers and build something out to really show an actual case study. But I think that having some solid case studies, maybe having a book that's done really well in the marketplace. Those are things that position you as a thought leader, give you credibility, boost you. But that being said, you could also not have a book at this point, but still have, articles that have been written about you, or you've written articles yourselves and submitted them to, like, say, the Harvard Business Review or other places that, really give people, comfort that this person is legitimate and, they're recognized in the industry.
That's interesting. You mentioned the book idea. It's one thing I've been humoring is writing like a business book, but I was like, there seems to be a lot of traffic, a lot of people doing it, especially with like Russell Brunson's like, write a book and you get clients kind of thing. It seems very salesy and pitchy, and I don't like reading the books. So what I did when I was doing security work, I helped a logistics company improve their morale, and the productivity went from, let's say, 100,000 products to almost 1 million products a day, and injury rate was plummeted. And I don't know how to like reference that into a book.
So, I think that you kind of have to, if you're going to write a book, position yourself different from all the other books out there in the marketplace. And I think, show a distinct um, point of view. You're adding something, and you're not just sort of building on what's already out there. I mean, you can build on something and grow from it, but I think the people who do are the least successful are those that sort of just get basic information spit out through either AI or a ghostwriter, and they're really not writing about something that is completely different than everybody else has ever talked about in the marketplace. What's your edge? What's your little thing? And so I wouldn't recommend people writing a book unless they have that, or maybe you just kick the can a little bit until you figure that out, what your little edge is.
Okay.
But I do think that books do work. They add a lot of legitimacy. They can be self-published, but you do want to make sure that you are giving something of high value. And I think one of the easiest ways to look at that are look at books that have mattered and have generated, many, many hundreds or if not thousands of Amazon reviews. They usually have a hook, something that is sort of like overarching theme, but then they get in there and they give you solid anecdotes. They give you solid um, uh, information. I a long time ago, because I started this business as a poet, I didn't have a lot of marketing experience, so I bought a marketing book online. It was about teaching me how to do AdWords, and it was with Perry Marshall. And I bought the book, and then he also had an upsell for the audio book. It was just an MP3. It wasn't through Audible or anything at the time. And so I did that, and I meant to listen to it. I meant to read the book. And then I started getting this autoresponder where each day he was feeding me little gems. And I'm like, God, this guy's so smart. And then he's like, after a few, after I learned so much through the emails, the daily drip of emails, I did a meeting with him where I went to his house with three other people for 2 days, and for half a day he looked at my business, dissected it, and we addressed AdWords, but I'd say 95% of it was just addressing my business. Like, you need to improve this landing page, you need to do this, all of these things, and my head was just swimming. And then he's like, "Oh, I also have a marketing mastermind of, like, 14 to 16 people that we meet 3 times a year." And I was like, "Yeah, I joined that. I got so much out of this whole experience." And then later he told me, he said, I said, I am kind of embarrassed, but I keep feeling like I have to go back and either read your book or listen to your audiobook. But, and he goes, "Let me guess." He goes, "You got my emails, and then that's what got you into action, and you learned a lot." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "My emails are the book." He says, "People don't read. They're not good. A book is intimidating. Very few, a lot of people buy it intending to do it. Very few people read it." And he goes, "So I just give people the book broken down in autoresponder series." He goes, It goes, you can get on my autoresponder series, never even buy the book, and you'll learn the same thing that's in the book. And he's just like, and he goes, and then there are people who then will get everything. And he goes, a natural progression is in video. Do a bunch of videos, give the book away for free. And he says people will watch the videos and then go still buy the book. And he says, and then they'll still want to work with you. They'll like, I've learned all this. I want someone else to implement it. And he says, he goes, I give all my secrets away. He goes, I don't lock them away. And then once you pay a big fee, he goes, I give it all away freely. And he goes, and some people just, they're not going to read the book. Some people aren't going to listen to the audiobook. Some people will read the autoresponders because it's a very small commitment. Each day you get a little email with such a strong nugget. And I do imagine that it's a bridge. Well, that it is a bridge. That it's not the exact literal book, but he's condensed it. And then from there they go on and do other things with him. But he says he's got some people that then want to say, I've read all this, but I don't want to actually implement it in my business. I want to just hire someone. So at the time he was working with someone, he would just pass you along to them. And so I think that that speaks to the value of what you have to communicate. I've read books from experts where I felt like they were holding on to all of the value, and they were just giving you anecdotes of people they've helped and principles, but no real tools, no real resources, no real actionable tips. And that works for some people, but for me, I give all my stuff away. I mean, I have a free masterclass on my website at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN, where I have an hour-long video masterclass for free. I give people the best secrets in PR, the types of press releases that work in and out. And I've had so many people say, I don't get it. Why do you give this away? I'm like, if you learn how to do amazing releases, you're going to do them. They're going to work, and you're going to keep at it. And so that's my goal. And I want to get my customers to do better, more strategic releases and have more wins. And I think that going to back to coaching, I think that if you're going to write a book, I think it has to have actionable things that can make a difference in someone's life. And for a lot of people, there is a hook. It's something that is very meaningful that they found a pattern with many people that they've coached. And in that pattern, it is this, and this is how they want to approach it. Maybe it's a metaphor or something like that. And I think that's kind of how a book sort of coalesces from, becoming an idea that you can then start to implement and start to build out.
So it sounds very similar to a press release. You have to think of the book, the unique proposition, the angles, how to, yeah, you could use, like, let's say you use Jordan Peterson's style of explaining, although that's very long at times, but more elegant and long and poetic, but then you're maybe more blunt, like uh David Goggins. So that's interesting. The correlation between the press release style and reading the book.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, we all want stories and we all want information and we all want to, I think, either be entertained or educated. And I think some of the best content does both. And especially, if you're in business and you're doing a book, in a business book, you definitely want to focus more on the education than the entertainment, but you can't ignore that because if you're just all facts and tips, it can be kind of dry. And I think that's where sometimes putting anecdotes, making it personable so you can kind of envision things and stuff like that. I think that can make a huge difference.
Oh, 100%. I agree. I'm reading Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief, and the first like few chapters were great. He was explaining his backstory, and then as he's going into the mechanics, I'm like, oh God, this is the driest lecture I've ever heard. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this in time.
Right.
Um, is there anything in particular I might have missed that you want to talk about?
I guess the big thing is that when you do press releases, you do want to make sure you're doing strategic ones that are important. If you look at the world of press releases out there, and even the releases that we normally get, not more than 90% of them don't generate any earned media. And that's what we call it when a journalist writes about you. And so you just have to be careful that when you write releases, you're not looking at what other people in your industry are sending press releases off because the majority of them aren't helping them. And so you kind of really want to focus on the ones that are meaningful, the ones that, focus on unique selling proposition, the ones that incorporate story, the ones that, introduce data and put data in there. Even doing a survey or a study within your industry is a slam dunk, easiest way to get earned media and to really position yourself as an expert in your industry in a way that you don't even have to be an author. I've had companies who were, one in particular is almost a link farm, and they would do top 10 rankings of lots of verticals in lots of spaces, like top CRM for salespeople, top software for architects, and all these different verticals. And it felt to me like a link farm. Years ago, they started doing surveys for each of these little verticals, and after
Mhm.
doing that for a few years, they they on average they got 8 to 14 articles for every press release they did, all going back to that one little vertical. Drove their SEO up. Everybody in the industry knew about them, and today they get approached repeatedly by all these different industries to say, "Can you give us a comment on this space? This just happened, this merger or this thing." They have established themselves as experts just by using PR and getting that word of mouth out there, that huge credibility, and has been really meaningful for them. And at the time, years ago, they were doing 30 plus of these surveys a year for each of these little verticals, and they were doing them annually, and it worked out really, really well for them. They are, known as big deals now, and people pay a huge premium to be considered for these rankings and stuff like that. So it really shows that with media attention, it elevates you and really puts you out there as someone to trust, because it gives a signal of trust to people when people write about you in the media, and it really helps to increase conversions, drive interest, drive traffic, drive sales, and that's really amazing. And again, for anybody who's thinking about PR, I would recommend the first place to go to is that free masterclass at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. Again, completely free. It really is very digestible, less than an hour. You're in and out, and I guarantee you'll come away probably with a brainstorm of half a dozen ideas that you could do that would do strategic types of press releases for your business, that would result in definitely not a 90% failure rate as opposed to what so many releases do.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'll definitely link that in description for everyone too. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to chat with you. I learned so much today.
It's great talking with you.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're a awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.